It was 3:17 a.m. when I heard the front door slam. Not close, not soft. It was the kind of slam that tells you, I don't care if you wake up. I was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a half-empty glass of whiskey and a million questions I was too scared to answer. I didn't even pretend to be asleep. Why should I? She knew I'd be waiting. Lila didn't look at me when she walked in. She dropped her heels by the door like they were heavy stones, tossed her jacket over the chair, and headed straight for the fridge. No explanation. No apology. Just silence, except for the sound of the bottle of sparkling water hissing open like it was mocking me. I asked, so was it worth it? I swear my voice cracked like a teenager's. She turned to me with this smirk, this ice-cold, satisfied smirk, and said, yeah, Clifford. It was. Travis is a better listener than you've been in months. Maybe I should thank you for pushing me there. My whole body went numb. She wasn't hiding it. She wasn't pretending it was a mistake or blaming the alcohol. She wanted me to know, to feel it, to watch me break apart piece by piece. I just sat there, gripping my glass so hard I thought it would shatter in my hand. Then she did something I'll never forget. She took her phone out, placed it on the table, and said, you want proof? Go ahead. Read it all. I'm done hiding things from you. She smiled when she said that. Like this was a game. Like I was some idiot waiting for the final punchline. I didn't pick up the phone. I couldn't. I didn't want her memories of him crawling into my brain. But she sat there, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, almost enjoying my silence. And all I could think was, who the hell is this woman? Because she wasn't my wife. Not anymore. The rest of the night was a blur. I remember her saying something about how she was tired of my sad puppy routine, how I never fought for her anymore. I wanted to scream, to break something, to tell her how much I loved her despite all of this, but all I could do was sit there and nod like a fool. I'm not sure which hurt more, what she did, or how little she seemed to care that she'd just burned our life to the ground. The next morning, I stared at that phone like it was some cursed object. It was still there, on the kitchen table, exactly where she'd left it the night before, like bait waiting for a desperate fool. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know. But I also couldn't shake the sound of her voice when she said, go ahead, read it all. It was like she wanted me to drown in it. Maybe I deserved to. When I finally unlocked it, and yes, I knew her passcode, though part of me hated myself for using it. I felt my stomach twist. At first, it was just harmless messages, inside jokes about meetings, a meme about their boss, something about a coffee order. But then I kept scrolling. That's when I saw her side of the conversation. The way she laughed through text. The way she told him about things she hadn't told me in months. And then there it was. I wish you were here instead of him. I wanted to throw up. It wasn't just one night. It wasn't even about Travis. It was about me, or rather, everything I wasn't anymore. I kept scrolling, but every message felt like a knife being twisted. There were voice notes too. I couldn't bring myself to play them, but just seeing them sitting there, like little bombs ready to go off, made me feel sick. I didn't say anything when she came downstairs. She was wearing one of my hoodies, drinking coffee like it was just another day. I must have looked like a ghost because she glanced at me and said, so, did you find what you were looking for? No guilt, no fear, just this coldness that scared me more than anything. I asked her why. Not yelling, not accusing, just why. She didn't even flinch. She said, because you stopped seeing me. You've been so wrapped up in your little routines and your work and your pity parties that I wanted to remind you that I'm still here, that I can still make choices that hurt you. Those words hit harder than any confession. It wasn't about love or lust or some accident. It was a calculated decision. She wanted to hurt me because she thought I wasn't hurting enough already. The rest of that day, I walked around our house like a stranger. Every photo on the wall felt like a lie. Every memory felt tainted. I kept asking myself, do I even know this woman anymore? Or was I just too blind to see who she really was? That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't even know where I was going, but I had to get out. As I walked to the door, she looked up from her phone and said, what, running away now? I wanted to scream. Instead, I just walked out and slammed the door behind me. But something tells me this is only the start. Something is off, something worse than just her and Travis. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm about to uncover something I'm not ready to face. I didn't plan to go back home that night. I drove aimlessly through the city, passing empty streets and glowing signs of late-night diners, each one reminding me of the hours she wasn't with me. I ended up at this dingy motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where the walls are so thin you can hear the TV in the next room. I sat there for hours, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying every moment with Lila, wondering how it all turned into this. But no matter how many times I went through it in my head, nothing added up. Why Travis? Why now? And why did it feel like there was something she wasn't telling me? Something bigger than just that one night. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know who Travis was. Not just some coworker, but who he really was. I knew his last name because she once mentioned it while bragging about how good he was at pitching ideas in their marketing meetings. So, I did what any desperate, broken man would do. I looked him up. Social media, LinkedIn, even some weird half-dead business blogs he was tagged in. And that's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a photo from 3 weeks ago, some company retreat by the lake. It was nothing special at first, just a group of smiling coworkers holding drinks by a bonfire. But then I saw her, Lila, sitting next to him, leaning in close, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. She looked free, alive, and there was Travis, his hand resting on her back, just casual enough to pass as friendly, but just intimate enough to make my blood boil. I couldn't stop scrolling. There were more pictures. Her and him kayaking. Her wearing his baseball cap in a goofy selfie. And then, a video someone had posted. In it, she was dancing by the fire, her arms around his shoulders, like they were in their own world. It wasn't just a night. This had been brewing for weeks, maybe months, and I'd been too blind, too trusting, to see it. When I got back home, Lila was still there, still acting like nothing had happened. She looked up from her phone and said, "Oh, you're back." Like I'd just gone to pick up groceries. I asked her straight up, "How long has this been going on?" She raised an eyebrow, smirked, and said, "Why? Did you find something?" That smirk, it's burned into my mind. I told her about the photos, the videos. She didn't deny a single thing. She just shrugged and said, "So, are you finally paying attention now?" I felt like I was losing my mind. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was like she was trying to tear me apart piece by piece, testing how far she could push before I broke completely. I wanted to scream, to ask her why she would destroy everything we built just to prove a point. But instead, I stood there, shaking, feeling like the weakest man alive. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch, staring at the dark ceiling, and all I could think about was that smirk. The way she looked at me like I was nothing. I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about love. This was about control, about power, and I had lost every ounce of it. The next day, I woke up with a single thought stuck in my head. Where is she going when she says she's working late? It wasn't even jealousy at that point. It was survival. I needed answers before I completely lost my mind. Lila left the house around 6 p.m., dressed in this casual but too perfect outfit, jeans, boots, and a leather jacket she hadn't worn in years. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She didn't even look me in the eye. Just grabbed her keys, muttered something about a late meeting, and walked out like I didn't exist. I waited 5 minutes before following her. Yeah, I know, it's pathetic. It's the kind of thing desperate guys do in bad movies, but I couldn't help myself. I trailed her car through traffic, keeping a few vehicles between us, praying she wouldn't notice me. She drove across town to this trendy little bar I'd never seen before, the kind of place with dim lighting and live acoustic music on a weeknight. I parked across the street, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. She walked in like she owned the place. 10 minutes later, Travis showed up. I knew it was him even before I saw his face. Something about the way he moved, confident but cocky, like he thought the world owed him something. They hugged. Not a friendly hug, not a see you at work hug, but the kind of hug that makes you realize you've already lost. I wanted to storm in, grab her by the hand, and demand to know what the hell she thought she was doing. But I didn't. I just sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. What I saw next made me feel sick. They weren't just drinking or laughing. She leaned in close, whispering in his ear, her hand resting on his thigh like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she kissed him, right there, in front of everyone. It wasn't a quick kiss either. It was slow, intentional, like she wanted me to see it, even though she had no idea I was watching. I don't even know how long I sat there after that. Time stopped meaning anything. At some point, they left the bar, walking to his car, and I swear I almost followed them again. But something inside me broke right there in that parking lot. I felt hollow, like a shell of who I used to be. I didn't want to see any more. I didn't want that image burned any deeper into my mind. When I got home, I couldn't stop shaking. I poured myself a drink, then another, but it didn't help. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. I saw her. The way she smiled at him, the way she used to smile at me. That smile was gone, and I didn't know if I could ever get it back. Later that night, she came home like nothing had happened. She smelled faintly of his cologne. I didn't ask her anything. I didn't even look at her. I just sat there on the couch, silent, while she walked past me like I was a piece of furniture. And then I realized something. Maybe she wanted me to confront her. Maybe this whole thing was some twisted test. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Not yet. Because that night, I made a decision. If I wanted the truth, the whole truth, I'd have to get it myself. I needed to find out what Travis really meant to her, and why she seemed hell-bent on destroying me. Something told me this wasn't just about an affair. It felt bigger, darker, like I was only scratching the surface of something I wasn't supposed to see. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that bar, the way her hand rested on his leg like it had been there 1,000 times before. By sunrise, I'd convinced myself of one thing. I wasn't going to let this go on without knowing exactly who Travis was. Not just his smile and his funny stories from work that she always brought up, but the real him. The part of him that I could dig out if I pushed hard enough. I started simple. A quick online search of his full name, which I'd heard her say on the phone once, led me to his social media accounts. Perfectly curated pictures of weekend hikes, barbecues, and those fake candid smiles. He looked like the kind of guy who always gets invited everywhere. Charming, funny, and absolutely the type Lila would gravitate toward when she felt like I wasn't enough. But the deeper I dug, the stranger it got. There was a private photo album someone had tagged him in, probably not realizing it was public. In one of the photos, Travis wasn't the charming coworker with a casual smile. He was holding Lila's hand in the background. This wasn't recent either. The timestamp was from almost 2 months ago. Long before that night, she laughed in my face and said she'd been with him. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a one-time thing. It had been building in the shadows while I played the clueless husband. I decided to take it further. I found the address listed on one of his old business registrations, a place on the other side of the city. That evening, while Lila claimed she had another late strategy session, I drove there. It wasn't a house. It was some kind of loft apartment above a coffee shop. His car was parked outside. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I sat there in my car for almost an hour, watching, waiting. Then, like some cruel joke, the door opened, and there she was. Lila, not in her usual work clothes, but in this casual, soft sweater I'd never seen before, and she looked happy. Not nervous or guilty, but glowing in a way that made my chest tighten. She wasn't being swept off her feet. She was choosing this. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember walking into the house. I just remember sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the floor while the clock ticked louder and louder in my head. By the time she came back, at 11 p.m., claiming she'd been stuck in a long brainstorming session, I'd already gone through every possible way I could confront her. But when I looked at her, at that fake, tired smile, I couldn't bring myself to say a word. Instead, I asked her casually, "So, how was work?" And she froze. Just for a split second, but I saw it. That tiny crack in her armor. She knew I knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to start pulling on the thread. She quickly recovered and gave me some rehearsed answer about meetings running late, but I couldn't unsee that flash of panic. That night, while she slept next to me, I stared at the ceiling and realized something important. She wasn't just hiding an affair. She was hiding something bigger. The way she smiled when she talked about him. The way she acted like she wanted me to break. It felt like there was something planned, something deliberate. And if I didn't uncover it soon, I was going to lose more than just my marriage. I woke up the next morning with a sense of dread that was heavier than anything I'd ever felt before. I couldn't keep doing this, pretending not to know, pretending that Lila's lies were just some storm I could wait out. Every time I looked at her, I saw the way she touched his shoulder in that bar, the way she laughed with him, the way her face lit up when she talked about things I wasn't even a part of anymore. Something inside me snapped. I needed to see Travis face to face. I needed to know why he thought he could just walk into my life and tear it apart, piece by piece, while acting like the perfect coworker to everyone else. So I planned it. I spent the day figuring out exactly when and where I'd find him. Lila mentioned once that Travis often stopped at a little corner cafe near their office before work. It wasn't hard to track him down. His routine was as polished and predictable as his fake social media smile. The next morning, I parked across from that cafe, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I felt pathetic, like some stalker waiting for a confrontation I wasn't sure I could handle. But at that point, pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. When I saw him walk in, it was almost anticlimactic. He wasn't this larger-than-life figure I'd built up in my head. Just a guy with a smug walk and a phone glued to his hand. But when I followed him inside and called his name, he looked at me like he knew exactly who I was. That look, it wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Almost like he'd been expecting me. "Clifford, right?" he said, his tone annoyingly calm, as if we were just two guys about to chat about sports. I didn't even answer. I just told him, "Stay away from my wife." It sounded pathetic, even to me. He smirked, like he'd been waiting to hear those exact words. "She's not your wife when she's with me," he said. Those 8 words nearly made me lunge across the table. But I didn't. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I asked him why her, why this? And he just laughed. He told me, "She's not the woman you think she is. You should be thanking me. At least now you're seeing the truth." The truth. That word hit me like a punch. I wanted to ask what he meant, but he just stood up, tossed a few bills on the table for his coffee, and walked out like I wasn't even worth his time. I sat there, frozen, my heart pounding like I'd just been humiliated in front of the entire world. When I got home that night, Lila was already there. She didn't ask me where I'd been. She didn't have to. The way she looked at me, with that slight tilt of her head and that mocking half-smile, told me she knew. She always knew. It was like they were playing some game together, and I was the only one who didn't know the rules. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, scrolling through her messages again, through every trace of Travis I could find. And then I saw something I hadn't noticed before, a string of messages that weren't just about him or their meetings. They were about me, about my job, my routines, my habits. It was like they were studying me, dissecting my life piece by piece. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just an affair. This was something darker, something I couldn't ignore any longer. I don't know what they're planning, but I do know this. I'm done sitting quietly while they tear me apart. I couldn't stop thinking about what Travis said in that cafe. "She's not the woman you think she is." Those words were like poison, and the more I replayed them, the more I realized they weren't just meant to hurt me. They were meant to warn me, or taunt me. I didn't know which, but I needed to dig deeper. I wasn't just looking for proof of their affair anymore. I was looking for the truth behind whatever they were hiding. And I could feel it, in my gut, that there was something bigger at play. That night, when Lila went to bed, I took her laptop. It was risky, but I didn't care. My hands trembled as I logged in, half expecting her to catch me in the act. The screen was spotless, too spotless. No browser history, no saved emails, nothing personal. I almost gave up until I found a hidden folder buried deep inside her work files, disguised under some bland name like Marketing Drafts Q2. When I opened it, I froze. There were dozens of documents, but none of them had anything to do with marketing. They were filled with notes about me. Not just random observations, detailed accounts of my daily life. What time I left for work, who I spoke to on the phone, even what I ate for lunch on random days. It was creepy, unsettling in a way I can't even explain. I kept scrolling, and then I saw his name. Travis. The notes about him weren't just casual either. They read like logs. Conversations. Places they'd been. Times they'd met up when I thought she was working late. One document stopped me cold. It was titled The Bet. Inside, there was a list of dates and comments that made my blood run cold. Dinner with Clifford. He still has no clue. Travis thinks he can break him by August. Prove a point. Make him see how blind he is. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding louder each time. A bet? What kind of sick game were they playing? Was this all just to see how far they could push me before I broke? I wanted to wake her up, scream at her, demand answers. But something held me back. If I confronted her now, she'd just twist it all, like she always did. No, I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. And maybe, deep down, I wanted to hear her confess. I wanted to look her in the eyes when she admitted that the woman I loved had turned into someone I didn't even recognize. The next day, I called out of work. I couldn't sit in my office pretending everything was fine while she played this twisted game with Travis. Instead, I parked my car near her office building and waited. Hours passed, and then I saw them, Lila and Travis, walking out together. Not holding hands, but their body language said everything. They got into his car, and I followed them. They didn't go to a bar or a restaurant this time. They went to a house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't his apartment. It wasn't anywhere I'd seen before. They stayed inside for almost 2 hours. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my head spinning with questions I couldn't answer. What were they doing? Who owned that house? Why did this feel like something far worse than cheating? When they finally came out, I snapped a few photos with my phone. My hands were shaking, but I managed to get enough to prove something was going on. Lila didn't come home until late that night, and when she walked through the door, she didn't even look surprised that I was waiting. She just smirked, like she already knew what I'd seen. That smirk was worse than any confession. It was like she was telling me, "You can't stop this, Clifford. You were never meant to." That night, I couldn't close my eyes. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts but by the realization that I was living with someone who might be capable of anything. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted the truth, or if I was terrified of what I'd find. The next day, I woke up with a strange clarity. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe I'd finally hit the point where the fear had burned out, leaving only determination. I couldn't let this continue. Whatever game Lila and Travis were playing, it was ending now. I wasn't going to live another day as their target. I started with the house they visited. A quick online search of the address gave me a name I didn't recognize. It wasn't Travis's, and it definitely wasn't anyone I knew. Something about it made me suspicious, so I dug deeper. Turns out, it was a rental property, a place often used for corporate team-building events, organized through Lila's company. That gave me an idea. I called a friend who works in IT security and, with some convincing, got him to check Lila's company's internal server for the meeting logs tied to that address. What he found floored me. There wasn't anything romantic in those logs. No hidden messages about secret dates or love notes between her and Travis. Instead, there were project files and brainstorming sessions for some massive campaign. Travis wasn't her lover. He was her project partner on this big, high-stakes account. They'd been meeting off-site because the campaign was top secret, with NDAs so tight they couldn't risk discussing it in public. It all started to make sense. The secrecy, the smirks, even her cruel words. She'd been testing me, yes, but not in the way I thought. Later that evening, I confronted her, calmly this time. I told her I knew about the house, the files, and the meetings. I told her how I'd thought the worst of her and how much it had broken me. For the first time in weeks, I saw the Lila I remembered, the real Lila. Her face softened, and she sighed, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Clifford," she said quietly, "I was trying to wake you up. I felt like you stopped seeing me, stopped caring about what I do, and I guess I pushed too far. I never wanted to hurt you this much." She explained everything. How Travis was just her teammate. How they joked about testing me because I'd grown so distant, but she never thought I'd spiral like this. It was immature, and she admitted it. We both had been ignoring the cracks in our marriage, and this whole twisted mess was a wake-up call neither of us could ignore anymore. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, we actually talked. Not the shallow, polite conversations we'd been having for months, but really talked. About our fears, our disappointments, and what we both wanted. It wasn't easy, but it felt real. The next weekend, we drove out of the city, just the two of us, no phones, no distractions. We stayed in this little lakeside cabin, not the kind of romantic getaway you see in movies, but something raw and honest. We laughed, we cried, and slowly, piece by piece, I started seeing the woman I'd fallen in love with, and maybe she started seeing me again too. I won't pretend everything is perfect now, but for the first time in months, I feel like we're both fighting for this marriage, together. Sometimes, the ugliest moments are the ones that rip you open just enough to finally face the truth. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that love isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to rebuild, even when it feels impossible.